Welcome to Wild, Women in Lending Determined to Make an Impact. I'm your host, Robyn LaVassaur. They say our biggest fear isn't being inadequate. It's being powerful beyond measure. In this podcast, I will share how to break through imaginary ceilings, lean into success, discovering your purpose, and understanding how to create the business and life of your dreams. From failures to triumphs and all the tactics in between, let's jump into the wild arena together. Welcome back to Wild with Robyn LaVassaur. I don't know about you guys, but there has been a plague, I think in life in general, but there's so much of it in the mortgage industry. And it took me years and years and years to realize that not only was I contributing to the plague, but that it was having a major impact, not only on my business, but also of my own joy in the industry. So I want to talk about the blame game. The blame game is a big topic. You think about it in life in general, people are so quick to, we could call it excuses, we could call it reasons, we could say a lot of things, but if you really think about it, assign blame to something or somebody other than themselves and or negate blame altogether, meaning that there isn't anything except for a solution going forward. And so I want to talk about that today, specifically to the context of loans, but I know that there's listeners that are hearing this that are in other businesses. So metaphorically, think about this in your business, in your life in general. I'll give you some examples. In our world, there is underwriting, and during that underwriting process, they have a very specific job to do. When we get documents from a client, we ship it off to the underwriter, and the underwriter is like a second, third, sometimes fourth set of eyes on that document. Here's what's really interesting. If the first three people didn't know what to look for, didn't understand a specific rule, didn't know that that document would meet or not meet the underwriting requirement, underwriter receives that document, and all of a sudden the underwriter is saying, hey, I need more information. Now, here's where the blame comes in. As a loan officer and as a team in general, it is so easy in the effort to make the client think that you're still doing everything that you can, that you're doing you're doing your job at a high level, that you are protecting them, taking care of them, that you are not the one who is guilty of anything. You immediately go to blame instead of just next steps. So hear me, that would look something like this. I'm so sorry that the underwriter is requiring more information. I thought that this document that you gave us would work. I know it's inconvenient. What can we do? All of these things. And what it adds to is major emotion, doubt, frustration to the client. But then this is what happened in my business. And I think a lot of us can probably relate to this. And I think that some of us fall back into these habits even now. And I want us to get conscious about it. When we're doing that, I have had real estate partners, different people say to me before, hey, can we not ever have that underwriter again? Man, I pinned all of this stuff on an underwriter that they now think, hey, that was the problem. When the truth is, the documents were the problem, right? The amount of information provided. Now, that's not an always or a never by any means, that there's not, certain things that do take place where blame could potentially be assigned or owned. But let me tell you how much it hurts your business. Oh, that appraiser. Well, all of a sudden, when that appraiser does another property for you and anything, even if it's valid, goes wrong, they're like, it's that person. I talked in a previous podcast about, my husband's mom literally, or maybe it was at a mom boss, literally talking about hair in pancakes at IHOP as if they serve hair naturally in a pancake. Well, they don't. It happened once, right? But in her mind, she's assigned it as if it's permanent blame. What happens in our business is when we start to focus on let me push this off and leave myself in a safe place. And so let me walk through what that would look like. I'm going to give you another example. We were taking care of a really tough client. Now, the truth is the tough client generally comes with stress. That's natural, right? In most of our businesses, whether you're in medical, you're in insurance, when they need you under the guise often of duress, right? There's some sort of stress going on in their life. There's change, something's going on. And so the client was in a high stress position. For the record, mortgage, like one of the most stressful things on the planet for people to tackle. And on top of that, they were borrowing a lot of money. When anybody is borrowing a lot of money, hey, loan officers, like just so we're clear, the amount of documentation required, the higher amount of money they're borrowing, it just is the name of the game. It doesn't discriminate. And I always tell people that, like, even if you're well qualified, lending doesn't discriminate, right? It's going to look, and the guideline is the guideline is the guideline is the guideline, right? If you need a pay stub, everybody needs the pay stub. It's not something that, oh, we're picking on you. That's how it feels, but it's not, right? It's very universal. And so we basically had a very difficult, challenging client, challenging loan on top of that. One of those incredibly well qualified, not incredibly well documented borrowers. Always causes an issue. To top it off, it was a jumbo. What that really means is it's a certain level of loan amount. We were on about our fourth or fifth round of going back to the borrower and asking for more. Now, here's what's interesting. Every time you ask somebody for something more, it's because you needed more info. That info could lead to the need for more info. When we say, the underwriter needs more, it's their fault. What they think is there's a way out of it, or that they're now all of a sudden being picked on, right? Instead of this is a requirement and this is the why behind it. The moment someone really understands, do you see this right here? This didn't connect this appropriately, so we need to connect those two things. It's not anybody's fault, but it is our problem. Hear that statement again. It's nobody's fault, but it is a problem. And it's a problem that can be solved. And my job as a professional is not to assign blame to anybody. It's really to solve the problem, to walk you through options of how to solve the problem. But if I create the problem as if it's tied to another human being versus the rules, then people feel like they're a victim of something versus these are the natural steps of a loan. If you can relate to that for a minute, I cannot tell you how guilty we are in general. And as you bring staff in, you will see staff do that, right? If you're talking to somebody in an airline that blames instead of solves, and you're like, I need to get off the phone with this person and get to somebody who can help me. In the blame game, people feel like you're swimming in negativity, right? Like you're swirling with excuses and reasons which don't solve anything, nor do they build confidence or repeat customers. I didn't recognize that for a very long time. And I'm going to talk about the other tangents of the business here in a minute. But on this difficult client, I had my processor prep an email at the time to send to the client. I said, I'd like you to send it to me first because the client's emotions were all the way up here. And all of a sudden, she sends it to me and it starts with, I'm so sorry. I thought we were done. The underwriter's asking for more. This person, there's all these things that are basically pushing blame, adding apologies, trying to paint themselves in a better light. And that wasn't really at the root of what the processor was trying to do. She thought she was helping the client in that moment. Now think about that for a minute. We think we're helping when we keep the hero cape on ourselves, right? Like, hey, I'll fix it. I'll make it better. I'll try to talk to him. All of these things. No, let's just look at it. And does this or does this not meet a rule that needs to be followed in lending? Now, that could be in any business period. Like, why am I asking for it? Do I personally understand it? And then how do we solve this problem? So I said, hang on, let me write this email again and show you. So I rewrote the email and I literally rewrote it with 0 apologies and nothing but good news. A clear statement of what just went on, why we needed the additional documentation, what link was where, and how quickly they could ultimately get it to us, very much assuming the closing, right? Hey, I need you to get me this within a couple hours. Should be very easy to find on here, right? Get it over. You've done great. Thank you so much for the hard work and the collaboration, right? Underwriting's excited to get you moved to closing. We're thrilled for you. All the focus was on solution, on the end game, on the result that we were shooting for, on the steps to take to get there. None of it was on, I'm sorry, it was this person. I wish it was different. I hoped for this. I know you're exhausted. None of it was in that space. And take a step back for a minute from your business. How often do you encounter people that play the blame game? How often do you find in the lending world, the title company, the attorney, the escrow, the appraiser, the realtors on both sides, the inspector, the seller, the buyer, the lender, the processor, There are countless opportunities to push something off to somebody else, to feel the need to blame somebody or something instead of just focused on next steps, focused on solution, focused on the end game with no excuses, reasons, finger pointing. What it really does is not only does it make everybody else weaker, but it actually weakens you. It weakens your own business when you want to point the finger at other people. And the easiest thing to do is say, hey, potentially there might be an actual problem and it's nobody's fault, but here's the solution. And I'm going to be the professional that leads you to a solution. When you take that kind of control over a transaction, when you are not willing to get in the weeds on the blame, when you are not willing to let other people get in the weeds on the blame, everyone's emotions stay much more even. Everybody understands next steps. Everyone is focused on solving, on next steps, on how to get to the end result. And all of a sudden, the stress level goes down some, the collaboration goes up, and people end a transaction going, how do I work with these people again? And so hear me on this. Blaming is not a game that you want to play in business. It's really not a game that you want to play in life. It weakens you. And I think that people sometimes think blame makes them feel stronger and ultimately push things off. I would shoulder everything to just simply own it and say, how do I take control of this again and not worry about everything that took place? Both can be true, right? There might be somebody to blame. At the end of the day, my business started to skyrocket when I simply got so clear and so straight with people on next steps, on problem solving at the highest level, on ultimately just being focused on where we are headed, not where we have been. And all of a sudden, people would say, gosh, I trust what Robyn has to say about it. I see, oh gosh, why do I always feel better when I talk to you? Why do I believe, when you say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I will tell you, one of the number one things that I did was I eliminated all levels of blame. I'm going to give you one more quick, painful story that I think you guys will be able to relate to. If you have a team in any fashion and or you're teamed up working with people on loans, which is pretty likely, I made a huge mistake once. And I came into my team and I said out loud, this is a client that will never make happy. I've actually done that 2 different times, right? Where I literally allowed for blame, if you will, up front on their difficult. Now, the truth is, in that moment, if I was creating enough leads and enough loans, I would have just chosen to not make that person my client, right? The client is a mutual relationship, meaning I accepted responsibility to take care of somebody. And if I thought to myself, I'm never going to make them happy, what I did was I gave my team a hall pass to blame everything, playing at a lower level, maybe not serving the client at the highest level, not being as organized or as on point as we could have been. I allowed them an excuse day one to blame the client, to blame the attitude, to blame a difficulty, to blame someone else's misery on their low performance. Both can be true. Somebody can be miserable, difficult, all of those things. If you take them on as a client, you are still choosing to play at the highest level no matter what. And there is no blame to be assigned to anyone else's behaviors or anything that causes your actions to not be at the highest service level. And when I gave that excuse to my team, they inadvertently lowered their standard of even trying to make someone happy. And I recognized it at the end. And instead of being mad at my team, I came in and I owned it personally. And I said, hey, that's on me. I should have never said, this is a client and we'll never make them happy. I should have said, this is a client and they're going to challenge us to do the best work we've ever done. And what a big difference that is when we take a mindset, catch yourself, stop for a minute, catch yourself. Ed Milet always says, scratch that, right? Like you can see in your own head, hey, I just blamed somebody. You know what? Let me take that back. The truth is, this is no one's fault. Hey, the truth is, we're going to play at the highest level, right? When you are focused forward, when you are a solutions-oriented person, you are magnetic. People say, how do I do business with them again and again and again? When people point fingers everywhere, there is no clear path. Think of it like a maze where there's really no end. When someone else says, oh, I see it. We're right over there to get to the end. We're going to be there in no time. And I'm not going to point at anything or anybody else versus just stepping forward. Man, your business will soar as a result of it. this is helpful, share it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.